All right, folks, I want to talk about something today. Can we be honest about big bikes? I think that there's a thing going on in motorcycling in terms of people feeling like they need big motorcycles, and honestly, a backlash and a market reaction in what we're seeing with the small adventure category. So, what is this idea of a big bike, right? Back in the 70s and 80s, a big motorcycle was something that was like, you know, a 750, a CB 750, maybe an 1100, right? Something that made about maybe 90 horsepower at the most, right? Something like that. I think our collective understanding of what a fast, big motorcycle is has changed so dramatically that we've kind of completely lost the plot. And it kind of turns out that, you know, something that makes about 100 horsepower, maybe 120, something that weighs between 400 and 500 pounds is about the perfect amount of motorcycle that most people go to. But there are certainly advantages to a big bike, right? Let's talk about sport bikes for a little bit. With sport bikes for a long time, getting the big motorcycle, the leader bike, the flagship, meant that you had access to technology that you simply couldn't get in the middleweight category. For example, for a long time in Yamaha's lineup, the R1 featured a 6-axis IMU, advanced rider electronics, all of the gadgets and go-fast whiz-bangery that you would want on a racetrack to give you really fast lap times. Up and down quick shifter, like all the bells and whistles, right? Meanwhile, the R6 kind of languished in the corner as, you know, kind of an old school race bike. In its final years, it came equipped with the quick shifter and really rudimentary traction control. It was a similar story for the ZX6 for a long time too. The middleweight bikes just simply didn't get the love in terms of technology, which made a lot of riders go for that big bike. They wanted to go for the flagship leader bike because they could get all the tech, right? All the stuff that would make them theoretically faster and safer. Now, fast forward roughly, 5 or 6 years from that point, and the market's changed a lot. The new not-so-super sport category bikes are more advanced than even R6s were. They have more advanced electronics, they have ride-by-wire, they have all kinds of stuff, right? Although the R6 did have ride-by-wire, but you guys know what I'm saying. The new super sport category, stuff like the R9, the Panigale V2, those motorcycles now have all kinds of tech. They've received the trickle down of the 6-axis IMU, the quick shifters, the wheelie control, the lean sensitive traction control, all the cool stuff that you want. And even the middleweight naked bikes now have that stuff too. So the big selling point that used to be for leader bikes was all that tech, all the fancy stuff and all that, right? But now you get that in a package that's just cheaper and easier to ride and live with. What we're sold in motorcycling is this idea that you need to constantly be upgrading or advancing to the next thing. And the reason manufacturers do this is to sell you more motorcycles. If they were to make a middleweight bike that had everything you needed and didn't have anything to shoot for in the future, well, what would the point be, right? A manufacturer wants to keep you locked into a progression to make you feel like you need to get the latest and greatest thing. But a lot of riders that have been riding for a long time know that, the flagship stuff, the big bikes, so to speak, the only thing that they really do that's superior to the middleweight bikes is they can achieve faster speeds in less time, especially with sport bikes. Nowadays with the R9, the Panigale V2, I have a V2 right now, don't tell anybody, but we're featuring it for the next giveaway bike, and I'm going to track test it very soon. I'm floored at the capabilities of the motorcycle, and yet it's still a great motorcycle to ride on road. I'm completely blown away. And again, going back to what I was saying about the historical analysis of this, in the 90s, a Ducati 916 made about 120 something horsepower. Our collective understanding of what a fast bike should be has gotten really, really warped. So in the leader bike category nowadays, the only thing the big bike does is just go a little bit faster in a straight line. Most of these middleweight bikes feel phenomenal to ride on the street. They make a lot of power. They're super fun to ride. They have all the tech and features you want. Hell, for God's sake, the R9 and the Panigale V2 both come with cruise control. They got cruise control. You can get heated grips. You can do whatever you want with these bikes, You can really have a good time with them. Now, let's talk a little bit about the adventure and touring category, because that's where I think the big bike phenomenon has kind of been changing a lot without people realizing. So for a long time, the big bike in terms of touring, in terms of adventure touring, that whole kind of strata of motorcycling, the big bikes had the most kind of commanding road appeal, right? Like, they were the motorcycles that also had the most technology, the most features. They were heavy, they were weighted, they could go down the road and just slab it up for thousands of miles. Something's happened in the middleweight segment where, you know, bikes like this Touareg 660, a T7, an Ibex 800 or whatever, a Triumph 900, Tiger, all those motorcycles are now plenty capable of going down the road for long distances as well too. And they do it at a substantially lower price point too. And now we've seen the entry-level adventure category where people realize, wait a minute, I don't even need 450 pounds of weight. I don't even need 100 horsepower. I could do with like 50, and I could have a bike that makes like 350 pounds wet and ready to ride, and is a third of the price of some of these bikes that I'm looking at. And I really think, given what's happened in the economy, given what's happened to people's wages, you know, it's a story we've been telling here on Yami Noob for years now, where I don't really think the demand for something like a BMW, you know, 1300 GS is as great as it used to be, simply because the consumer is more value driven. I think the people who want those flagship adventure bikes are always going to get them, but I think there's a reason why the lighter weight category and the lighter weight segment is getting a lot of love and attention, because a lot of riders are kind of waking up to the idea that you just don't need all that much bike to do the things you want to do. And also, when you build a motorcycle that is so vastly over capable of touring or of adventure bike riding or of riding off-road and trying to be a road bike, you know, it ends up being too much of too many things. I've talked about this in flagship adventure bikes, which I've ridden several of, and the Ducati Multistrada really is one of the worst offenders, in my opinion, of just having like so much tech and so much features that you end up with a bike where you're like, what is it even really trying to do? You know, what is this motorcycle's purpose? I feel that way about the BMW GS as well. And to ride a motorcycle like that on the daily, I know a lot of guys do it and I know they like it, but for most people, you're like, this is a bit too much, you know? Because when a motorcycle gets heavier and bigger and more touring capable, it kind of stops being as fun around town, and you know, you kind of lose that peppy flavor of it. You know, consider this, like you could ride like a 300-pound dual sport motorcycle and it's so much fun. It's lightweight, it's peppy, it's playful, but then you get it up on the highway and yeah, it kind of stinks. Like, you don't want to be slabbing up thousands of miles on that. But people don't like to talk about the inverse, right? Where it's like, you get a Goldwing or a BMW GS, and yeah, it'll do this sort of thing all day. It just crushes miles. It'll just go for forever. But on the flip side, when you just want it to be kind of a normal motorcycle, you just want to like run to the shops really quick, or you just want to do a quick trip, you know, for a couple of hours, it's so geared towards big adventure distance touring kind of stuff that it kind of stops being a good motorcycle. It's just kind of cruising around. And that's really where these middleweight bikes and the small adventure bikes are crushing it right now, because they can go touring and they can ride long distances, but at the same time, they're not only designed to do that, right? Because, I mean, let's be real, right? Some of you guys out there buy Goldwings to go and crush 50,000 miles a year, right? That's phenomenal. I'm very happy for you. That's great. You're using the bike for its intended purpose. But if you buy a BMW GS and you ride 5,000 miles a year and you're mostly just commuting to and from work, you know, it's the same level of overkill as buying a liter bike to do that, right? Because you're like, why did you buy this motorcycle that ostensibly can go like off-road and long distances and do all this stuff to then just ride it to the office and back, right? You know, and you could make the same case for me and my Touareg over here. I'm not immune from hypocritical thinking. I ride this motorcycle that's very capable off-road. It's very capable for adventure touring, and I primarily use it to commute from Yami Noob HQ back to my house. That's pretty much all I use it for, because I have a young baby and it's just kind of hard to make time to go for a big trip. I'm hoping that the long-term play is in a year or two. You know, maybe I'll take this thing out for a really big road trip and enjoy it for what it's supposed to be. But, you know, the longer you ride, the more you realize that the big bike thing is kind of just, it's all marketing hoopla. You know, it's all just people trying to extract money from you. And they're trying to sell you a dream that the bigger bike is better. And and nowadays in 2025, it's really difficult to say that the bigger bike is legitimately better than any of these middleweight bikes I mentioned, right? Is a Super Duke 1390 better than a street triple at being like just like a fun street going naked bike? Not really. Yeah, it's got more torque and it again achieves faster speeds faster, but what does it really do that the street triple can't do? And on that too, like, what does a Panigale V2S do that a Panigale V4S needs to do for you, right? Like, what do you need to get out of a Panigale V4 that you can't get with the V2? Basically nothing. And to be honest, people really don't like when I say this, but most riders are better served with smaller motorcycles because you can actually use them and grow your skill sets. But again, the human is a fickle creature, and we often want to get motorcycles that speak to us, that evoke us. And look, none of us are immune from buying the really silly, crazy thing, right? It's the reason why people buy 800 horsepower SUVs and pickup trucks. You're like, what do you need that for, you know? If we all only bought bikes that we needed, well, then we'd all be riding around Versys 650s, right? And who the hell wants to live in a world like that? I sure don't. Here's the through line I want you guys to think about. All motorcycles are compromised in some way. And depending on what you want to do with them, they are either better or worse at doing X, Y, and Z. And the more you ask your motorcycle to do, the more compromised it becomes. Like, it is a small miracle that this Touareg with a 21-inch front wheel and 80 horsepower is anywhere near as good on a twisty road and on track that it is simultaneously being good off-road. Because the design briefs for both of those machines would be completely at polar opposites, right? Like, if you wanted to build a good off-road bike, it is literally the opposite of if you want to build a street bike. And conversely, you know, if you were to take a flagship leader bike and you ask it to commute every day to work, well, yeah, that's kind of a bad use of that motorcycle, and it's compromised in that way. But again, the through line I want to leave you with is you can do whatever you want with whatever motorcycle you have. It's just either going to be easier or harder to do those things. Riding off-road with the Panigale V4? It's certainly possible. Should you do it? I don't know. Are you able to do it? Yeah, sure, you can ride it off-road. It's not going to be great at doing it, and other motorcycles are much better at doing it, and you should think about, if you're trying to do that a lot, you know, what you should do with it. And that's the through line, right? Like, as you go and get another motorcycle and you're going to fall victim to the big bike syndrome, just think about what it is you actually do with your bike. I think a lot of us have aspirational thoughts with our motorcycles. Like, we think we're gonna go and rip up the canyons 3 days a week. We think that we're gonna go on these long way round, insanely cool, big adventures. But the vast majority of us just use our motorcycles kind of like this. We kind of putt around town, we go to and from work, maybe we take a longer weekend trip here and there, and that's it. And if that's the use case for your bike, you should really consider what bike is going to best fit you and what you like, you know? And again, there's a reason that a lot of riders are trending towards these middleweight adventure bikes, entry-level adventure bikes, naked street sport bikes, because both of those categories can do most of everything, right? If you're a sport bike rider, you know, getting a naked bike like a street triple, I mean, you can tear up any track day you want, have an absolute blast of a time. You can then turn around, go on a nice weekend ride with it with your boys. Like, it is a great flexible motorcycle you can do all kinds of cool stuff with. Conversely, get an adventure bike, you can absolutely commute to work and back, and it's so comfortable and easy going to do that. You can also take a big long trip and hit up some forest roads and gravel roads with it. You know, there's really no compromises at that point, really. And apparently you can take it on track, as I proved. I don't know, I'm glad to see the tides changing in the motorcycling community. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. There's a lot of really cool bikes coming out. And I'm kind of glad that, you know, in general, the super flagship bikes are just, you know, kind of doing what they need to do over there in their own little corner. They're just being the $40,000 flagship for super rich dudes that have too much time and too much money to buy these bikes, and that's cool, man. They support the industry in general. So if you got $40,000 burning a hole in your pocket and you want to go buy a Ducati, I think it's great. You're supporting motorcycling. I don't think it's the most optimal or efficient way to enjoy motorcycling. You know, that's just my personal take on it, but you do you, man. Do whatever you want to do. Buy that $40,000 Ducati. Because at the end of the day, you got to get the bike that makes you feel good and makes you feel happy. And if owning the 200 plus horsepower motorcycle makes you feel happy and you're using it responsibly, that's awesome, man. Enjoy it. But for the vast majority of riders, I don't know, the flagship bikes, the big bikes, they don't really need to, they don't scratch the itch necessarily. So what do you guys think about these big bikes? What do you think about the flagship bike idea? What do you think about, you know, the type of motorcycles that you go out and they weigh 600 pounds and they make 200 horsepower? Do you think it's excess? Or do you think everybody should own a freaking Turbo Hayabusa, baby? Because that's the real god tier Giga Chad motorcycle. If you want to go get a big bike, get a freaking Turbo Hayabusa, baby. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later. Ah, you've made it to the end of another Yammy Noob video. Aren't you just a special little cookie? Aren't you just something so great? Aren't you just, look at you, you're just so freaking cute. Why don't you go ahead and click on the next video? Why don't you go ahead, listen, hey, I'm just kidding around. Hey, listen to me. Click on the video.